I can.
The first item is the designation of a temporary chairman to conduct the meeting.
I would like to nominate Jim Weber.
I guess I'll second myself. All in favor?
If I have a vote, I certainly can. I don't know if I can vote on it or not.
All right.
Okay. The next item is consideration of the meeting minutes from 3/27. Any additions or corrections?
Paul wasn't here, so I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of tough, isn't it?
Yeah. So you can just.
I would say we postpone the improvement.
No, you can
It'll never work, will it? I'm the only one who can. I agree to accept the public work minutes as written. Next item, designation of exception to public emergency for Wisconsin statutes Hanley Street Road Improvement Project. Tom, you want to give us just a quick nutshell? We have the document that talks about emergency procedures.
So the request comes from the Hanley Road project that we're working on now, which is a mill and overlay project with curb and gutter removal. Total curb and gutter removal from Carmichael Road to a little bit east of Hanley Road was total. Unfortunately, the conduit for the streetlight wiring was directly behind the curb, and a majority of that conduit and wire got damaged during the removal. And when the other conduit that wasn't damaged, when we flipped it over just to get it out of the way for the curb machine, we need approximately 2 to 3 feet behind the curb for this the curb and gutter machine. So it was damaged. We had talked to the electrical contractors, a couple of them, and got quotes for either salvaging what we had or just putting in new conduit and new wire. And we felt it was just more economic. It's a lot of money, but we felt that it was going to be the betterment of the project and for years to come to use new conduit, new wire, and then not put it back right behind the curb, because we're going to have that issue 20 years or 50 years down the road again. So to trench that conduit in to up to code, it's supposed to be 18 inches minimum behind the curb, at least 3 to 5 feet. Some areas we're not going to get 5 feet, but certain areas we probably can. So if we declare this, currently the power is turned off because of all the wires are damaged. A lot of wires are damaged. So it's a safety issue where, if we were going to replace it as a city project, as away from this rehabilitation, the road mill and overlay project, because it wasn't identified as part of the project, so we can get another subcontractor or contract it out ourselves without going through the Hanley Road agreement. We checked with the contractor, city attorney on that. So we're gonna, the city has they can go out and get a contractor for this without putting it out for bids. We have quotes, and I think that talks about it in the issue sheet. And like I said, we did talk to Catherine and Brenda, the finance director. So we'd like to, the Public Works Commission needs to, Public Works Committee needs to approve this not change order, but this project, so we can move through, expedite this so we can get it going, because of the safety issues with not having any street lighting on Hanley Road. If this gets approved tonight, we can start, I can notify the contractor so we can get the materials and get it scheduled.
So what you need is a motion to declare this an emergency and to
move forward with the installation of new conduit and streetlight wires. On another note, talking with Brenda, that there is money in the contingency fund that will probably cover this, You know, and so that money, that the funding source for this would be out of the contingency fund for the Hanley Road project. If we run into more issues or, you know, something unexpected, we'll probably have another conversation down further through the project if that, you know, does come up.
Well, I'll make the motion that we approve this as an emergency and that we expect the funds to come out of the contingency arrangement that we already have.
I would second that motion.
Okay. Now I'm going to bring up some discussion. That's one of the concerns, and my wife reminded me of this because she's on the Bike Ped Committee, is that that pathway at some point would probably need to be widened. And we want to make sure, so I was thinking you're talking about, well, 18 inches, okay, that's, we can, if you put it out 3 to 5 feet, then I assume that's the area where there isn't pathway. That would then perhaps be in the way of expanding, actually getting that path to be complete down one side of the street. Is there an issue with?
The 18 inches that I referred to was the depth. We need to get 18 inches minimum of depth.
Right. But
the width, going back from the curb, it's going to be in between the median,
and that
excuse me,
sidewalk.
and in between the back side of the curb and the walk path. Yeah, if we were to widen that walk path, I would assume that you would go, I don't know if you can go much closer to the road because of the pilings or, you know, the supports for the streetlights. I don't know if you're going to go much farther, maybe a foot or so. But if we even get the wires, see if you can visualize one light, the base of one light pole, then another base of another light pole. If we can at least go straight, that's going to give us probably 3 feet behind the curb. 5 feet is probably going to give us right to the edge of the asphalt. So in consideration of that, then we should probably think ahead a little bit and say if the walking paths were widened, that we put it in alignment with from pole to pole and stick with closer to 3 feet, which would still be enough room for the curb machine. That's a good point.
Okay.
And I think that's what we can do. If this gets approved tonight, then I'll talk to the contractor tomorrow and we'll go from pole to pole, you know, and not go any farther beyond that. So in case this walk path issue would arise, that we'd be clear of that. That's
widening or extension to actually get it on one side, completely on one side.
Absolutely.
So, but, okay.
No, good point.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, can I suspend the rules to meet the people at the table?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm Paul DeZiel, District 3.
I'm Kevin Soltis. I'm the Public Works Supervisor.
Okay. And are you Deb?
And I'm Debbie
Okay.
Andrews.
Thank you.
Sorry, we should
We also have a guest. Yeah,
guest is Eric Hensgaard from SEH. He's our SEH is one of our consulting engineers, which they do a variety of work for us. Eric is here tonight to talk a little bit about item number 7. He works mostly with our stormwater program and some of our stormwater projects throughout the city.
Okay.
So he'll be talking in a little bit.
Good call, Paul.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda. Can anybody get their Google to actually flip back and forth? Mine won't. Okay. Discussion possible action on the relocation of capital funds for the trail improvements on Hagan Street. Tom, you want to give
Capital
us a brief?
project
There's kind of 2 items here, just,
Yeah.
so.
4 and 5 actually are going to kind of go together. We bond every 2 years for different projects, variety of projects throughout the city, whether it's mill and overlay projects or street lighting projects. One of the things we bond for every 2 years is what we call a sidewalk improvement project. We go around and we do inspections every year, and we identify locations where we need to, you know, get some repairs and whatever on sidewalks. This year, I'd like to propose that we reallocate funds for the sidewalk program, which I think they coincide anyway, personally. You know what? I'm not sure what, you know, the difference between a sidewalk and a walk path. It's foot traffic and bike traffic and things like that. So the last year or so, we've had a lot of requests in this area of Hagan Street, which goes from Crestview Drive to Hanley Road, which just stops right there. It just stops, dead stop. So we'd like to consider, you know, reallocating those sidewalk funds into this trail fund and get a letter of engagement for this project to repair this walk path. And we looked at some where we might grind it up and call what it's called a reclaiming process. We're gonna, because we do certain improvements to that walk path, we're gonna have to update our pedestrian ramps, ped ramps, on I think 6 different locations, so that'd be some costs in that. And so it'd be reclamation of the asphalt, and then putting, you know, grind it up, regrade, ped ramps, and then putting a wear course on top. But, you know, we have comforts of homes on one end. There's one development, I forget the name of that, off of, that have a lot of seniors in there. And then there's apartments on the south end side. But there's a lot of traffic, a lot of people with wheelchairs, a lot of people with walkers, and especially from the senior citizen homes in that area. So I just want to present it and see if the council and the Public Works Committee would consider reallocating those funds toward this project. And if we do move forward with this, to get a letter of engagement for the engineering of this.
And then my only question, Tom, can we ask questions now?
Sure.
Sorry.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, that's why we're here.
I'm learning the protocol, sorry.
Well, we should.
Do we have,
technically, we should have a motion.
oh,
And
to
then-
do
and
it
then-
first?
And then we can discuss. But
Okay,
we always do it the other way. So
okay, so then I would make a motion to reallocate the funds as written on the sheet here.
I'll second that. Now, discussion.
Yes, thank you. So, Tom,
Now we're kind of actually down to number 5, then if we're.
Well, we're still on 4
we're
here.
discussing.
Okay.
We've got
so my
questions.
question is, the sidewalk, capital funds for sidewalk, is there, is that the total balance, the 96,000?
That's the total balance that's in there right now.
That's what's in there right now. So are we reallocating 100% of that fund, or are we saving any for the sidewalk?
We need to consider some for engineering for this project. You know, I would like to not, depends on, once we get the letter of engagement,
Yeah,
we get the plans and specs, and then as part of the letter of engagement, it has, you know, the engineers will come up with a project estimated cost.
okay,
And then we can see, can we go from one end to the other end with this, you know, the amount of money we have?
Okay.
Or are we going to go from one end, Crestview Drive to Montcroy, use that as a base bid? We do that a lot in projects when we're a little unsure if we have enough money.
okay,
And then we'll go from Montcroy to Hanley Road as an alternate.
okay.
I would not like to use a total, because we might have other areas that we might have to do emergency
That's
repairs or something like that.
That's what I was thinking. If we have, if there's other areas of the city that need it, would we still be able to use that money toward those other areas that are maybe not listed here?
That's something that once we get the preliminary designs,
Okay.
and once the bids come in, and like I said, I think we should consider having a base bid with an alternate, whatever these, once they get the design and some estimated costs, we can see is it going to work, or can we get it all done, or if it's going to really close, we'll have an alternate.
Okay,
And then I think that's a good idea to cover ourselves in case we have some other spots we have to get
Right,
done.
right.
Is there any issue with, it seems like we should have the letter of engagement and get that in before we actually allocate the funds, but
We can't pay for the, well, I guess it doesn't matter.
allocate the funds to pay for the engineering.
You can just reallocate just the funds for the engineering if you feel better about that. And then once the engineering comes in, then they're going to go to bid. And then when the bids come in, the remaining
Yeah.
will be there for.
Will it,
So
if we move that way, it extends the process another month. Will that cause us any problems?
I would think that with all the projects going around town, it'd be nice, this would be a great end of August project, you know what I mean? I'd like Hanley Road done before we tear up any, we got a lot of stuff tore up. So I would hope, and then I think there was a rough schedule on here. Yeah, here it is, say if we would, on June 18th, if the council would approve plans and specs, we'd advertise for bid June 18th. The bids would be published in June 21st and 28th. Open bids on July 12th. Award contract on the 16th of July.
Okay.
And construction August, September, which would be a good time frame, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we want to, I think it's tight enough where we don't want to put it off too far either.
Yeah, I think this is an important project because one thing, this pathway is on the bike ped committee's high priority list. The route from Hudson to River Falls. So it's an important piece of that. So it would be, I think it's a nice move ahead on that. So I like that project. But I think you raise a really good point. If we're going to, how much money do we want to commit? Do we want to commit all the funds? And we need to also look at what else is going on. We don't typically spend a lot on sidewalks, but we're starting to look at it now. So
Well, we've always had a sidewalk program, and generally we've requested $50,000 to $75,000. In the last few years, we've done 3 different processes. We do a remove and replace total sidewalks. We've done a process where we, a couple of years ago, in some sidewalks at Saint, we used a process called mud jacking or Eurotech that would drill random holes, and then they'd inject this high density foam or product, and it would raise the sidewalks up. We did some of that downtown. And then the other process we've used is saw grinding. It's like, say if there's a displaced panel here because of a root or for some other reason, generally it's trees, where we have more than a 1/2 inch gap or 3/4 inch gap or a differential, that they can actually grind the one sidewalk off. And we've had really good success with that. And the last few years, I think we've spent $2,000 to $5,000 a year on that. We go around the city, we do an inventory or, inspection, and the sidewalks, instead of tearing out and removing, that's a good fix that is giving us, 3 years or more without tearing the whole sidewalk up. So I'd like to, that's why I don't want to spend it all. I think even that, and then if we had a few spot repairs that we needed, if we could save $10,000, $20,000 or $10,000, $15,000 to do some other projects like that would be excellent.
Yeah, Jim, I would be good with the motion as stands, knowing that in the back of his mind, Tom's thinking you probably won't spend all of it, maybe, or.
it's
we have the understanding, but I think
2018 bond, so it's going to have to be spent down anyhow.
Okay.
Because you'll be going into the 1920s, so whatever's not spent, if it doesn't get spent, it's going to, be on designated funds. So I don't anticipate.
Yeah,
I guess it looks like the way that we were looking at the sidewalks that were originally scheduled were in areas where they probably weren't going to get done this year anyhow. So we would be requesting them again for next year and the following year, the funding then. So
Okay.
I don't think we'd have a problem with.
I don't think so this year.
With reallocating the entire amount
Okay.
for the project if you have to.
Okay.
That's.
Okay.
I'm good.
Then I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, me too.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is it just the council people that vote, just point of order? Is it,
Probably
is it
has,
Public Works, like, who all votes on the committee, I guess? Is it?
just you and,
Well, it'd be the three of you.
Oh, it's
would
just the
vote.
council people?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know.
yeah,
It's just-
good question.
Thank you.
So we are reallocating the funds, and then, so the next would be, we do need to approve the letter of engineering for the trail then. So just,
You need any explanation on that? That's on the issue sheet, in line item number 5.
it kind of is all together, but I would just want.
Mine flipped up to the Vine Street project. I was looking at the engineering costs. and
We
that's
got a lot
holy
of
moly.
letter of engagements here right in a row.
Yeah, I found it, just,
I think it's page 3,
right.
talks about the services that are going to be performed. And then, like I said earlier, I kind of read the schedule of the proposed project. Compensation, plan phase, estimated 47 hours, not to exceed 6,600. Construction phase, estimated hours. Now that's testing, inspection, that part of it is 10,000, so total cost of engineering would be $17,100.
I move to approve the request for a letter of engagement with, how did you say it?
Oops, do you want to see it?
This reallocation of funds.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Sure, it's the dollar amount.
yeah.
Is this the Bolton and Mink one, or is that?
This will be Bolton and Mink doing this project.
So not to exceed 35,000 one?
I'm looking for the wording for the engineering piece of it. It's kind of tied into this one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I move that we authorize Public Works to draft a bid.
Letter of
Are you
engagement.
going to bid it out, or are you,
No, this is a letter of
Strictly
engagement
letter of engagement.
with our consulting engineers,
all right?
one of them.
I'm just trying to get the right sequence of
You can
of
say,
events here.
you can say
Issue of-
contingent on the reallocation of the funds, because it can't happen unless the funds are, the reallocation is
Right,
approved.
right.
So,
But you're going to issue a letter of engagement
yeah, this is a,
to Bolton and Mink.
Mhm.
That's what we want to do. We're
That's
talking
in,
about
that's in the
issue this
issue
letter of
sheet.
engagement as described in the minutes.
Mhm.
I think we've approved the allocation of funds, and obviously if the project is beyond the funds we have, the whole world stops. But
Mhm.
So I would second that.
can you second that?
Yeah, sorry.
Follow that thread? All right. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
they're usually not so complicated. That's right. They're usually not that complicated. Okay.
Discussion and possible action on the letter of engagement for preliminary design for the 2019 Vine Street project.
This sounds like a long time off, but it really isn't. Specifically with the amount of utilities that are in the street from 9th Street to Wisconsin Street. So we wanted to get started on a preliminary phase planning for this project for 2019.
Mhm.
We already know there's a lot of conduit and fiber optic that goes up in the street. The wastewater and water department has a lot of underground utilities. I don't have the map in front of me. I do know that there's a parallel sanitary sewers that come down off of 12th Street down to 9th Street. That needs to be, updated and corrected to have just one line instead of the two parallel lines. I know there's some concerns about some wastewater laterals and things off of 10th Street. So there's going to be some excavation
Mhm.
for the utilities. I don't know exactly, where the water is on that, but that's something that, you know, it takes quite a while to, with some of the, I know the telephone company wants at least a year or better if they have to relocate any of their fiber optic wires. And they may not, but it's nice to get the process going.
Mm-hmm.
So, as another letter of engagement, we'd like the Public Works Committee and Council to consider getting the plan phase of this 2019 Vine Street reconstruction going.
And so what we end up with is a preliminary design of how this is going to happen. They find everything that's there as much as they can.
Yes, and then maybe do a preliminary design, you know, whether you know, we get into parking, no parking, bike lanes, whatever. You know, that should be all discussed with this part, and then they can see what they have in there. You know, they're going to probably do some elevations and locates and things like that to get the project started.
Okay.
So we just feel that we should be starting now and not after the first of the year. Otherwise, it would be a project that would be nice if we could get it done before school starts.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be nice to get this going, and then maybe once this is done, then we can start the next phase of this project and have a bid out earlier in the season so it could be constructed and completed before school is what I'd recommend.
Mm-hmm. I would make a motion to have Public Works go forward with the project on Vine Street between 9th and Wisconsin?
Yes,
Is
sir.
it-
I'll second that.
So you're approving the letter of engagement
We're improving
Letter
the-
of engagement, yes,
Right.
sorry.
in the amount of, not to exceed, for $35,100.
Right, sorry.
Letter of engagement not to exceed $35,100. All in favor?
You want to second it?
Oh, second. Thank you.
I'm going to say aye on that one.
Aye.
I don't know if you guys have heard of this, heard the good news on this project yet or not, but before Tom Sifko left, the part-time engineer, Tom and Deb worked on a couple different grants. One of them is a local road improvement project, which we were successful in getting. That was not such a big one. That was like, I don't know if it's $17,000, which is still very nice.
Mm-hmm.
But the other bigger program, MSID program,
Mhm.
it's a tough one. It's very competitive. We don't see it up on this side of the state very often, but we have received a letter from Governor Walker that our grant was approved in the amount of $486,784.
Wow.
Huge.
That's great, yeah.
Huge.
Should
You
probably-
know, then you get the other one on there, we're talking $500,000 in grants.
Right.
But we still need to make sure that there's restrictions,
Okay.
as on, like Grandview Drive, when that was Wisconsin Street, that was a federal government Safeway to Schools or something, so then there was requirements and things that are required when you get federal grants. This is a state grant, so I still want to talk with the state people and make sure that what's eligible.
Mhm.
I know some of the the sewer lines I don't think might be, but sidewalks, curb and gutter, and the roadway itself and signs are generally covered. So
Is this something that the design engineering firm should be part of this letter of engagement? That should be an output of that. The design is going to meet those requirements.
Yeah,
good point.
I don't know if you have to
yeah, they know that.
include
We're
that
just kind of
wording in
waiting for all the paperwork to come in. But they are aware of it because they helped write it. So they helped us with it
Good
too.
point. I'll follow up on that.
Yeah, just expect that it'd be part of the output of that design process.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh, we're finally to
what's next on the
Eric.
agenda? Since I
Oh.
keep rolling back to
Letter of engagement for engineering services for the MS4 documentation. That's Eric Kenskard with SEH is here.
Maybe you could speak on that a little bit, Eric, too.
Yeah, and maybe I'll give a little background on stormwater and the permitting that the city has.
That'd be excellent.
Okay, so when Hudson got this is kind of way back now, when Hudson got that new census in 2010 and was over 10,000 people, it kicked it into this requirement of being a permitted MS4 is what it's referred to at the state level. At MS4 has an M and 4 S's, so municipal separate storm sewer system, but everybody calls it MS4 permitting. And with that, it regulates the quality of stormwater. That's what it's really geared towards, is the quality of stormwater and the discharge of that stormwater to waters of the state. So here in Hudson, obviously, we've got the St. Croix River, but also we have the Willow River and Lake Malibu to the north, too. The St. Croix River does have a TMDL, approved TMDL on it, which is total maximum daily load, which restricts the amount of phosphorus that can be discharged into the river. So that's another added requirement of this MS4 permitting. And so we started back right when the city got permitted in 2015 kind of time frame of working to get, let me step back. So in this MS4 permit, there's 30 odd pages of requirements, 20 to 30 pages. I don't know exactly what it is, but a big list of different things that the city is obligated to do now under this permit and with the water quality piece of it. And so in 2015, Tom Sifko and Deb, I don't know if you were involved too, but Zuli had, and with our help, had applied for and received a grant, and they're called a non-point source grant through the DNR, which helps with funding of some of this stuff. And we started into this process, like I said, in 2015, and it kicked off the GIS mapping. The DNR requires that you do mapping of your storm sewer system, so you know where water is coming from and where it's going to, and that kind of idea. So where your storm sewer inlet's going, and when we did that, we piggybacked on the water and sewer GIS as well, water and sanitary sewer. So that was all mapped in the last year and a half or so. So that was a requirement that came out of the MS4. So that's complete. We also did the modeling, so that they require, I said that there's only so much phosphorus that can go into Lake St. Croix. There's also only so much dirt, total suspended solids, they call it, dirt that can be discharged from the city into waters of the state. We did that modeling too, that report. We have some revisions that the DNR required, but generally that's done. There's some minor revisions before it's finalized, but generally I'd say that that's done as well. So the mapping's done, this modeling are done. Those were two big pieces that we did. And then to jump ahead to what this letter of engagement is a continuation of requirements of the permit. So I don't know how much you've looked at it, and I won't go through the whole thing, but basically the Exhibit 1 of the letter of engagement is a letter that put together that outlines everything, and almost word for word this comes out of the permit requirements. So these are obligations that you guys have, and the majority of this, well, I'll go through the highlights of it. The task 1 is pollution prevention plans. So your municipal facilities, your public works garages, we need to look at them, and they require you to look at them and see if there's any pollution concerns, again, stormwater pollution. And we look at those. Then this task 2, which is the bulk of it in the next couple of pages, is all about.
Is that limited to the city facilities?
It is, yep. So the city is the one that's permitted. There are other, under this permit, there are other facilities within the city that have their own permits. Private industrial companies have industrial stormwater permits. Anything that disturbs over an acre now gets permitted through the city and through the DNR, so that has permits.
Okay.
All this task 2 is really like policies and procedures kinds of things. And we thought that the best way to do that would be in what we're going to call the City Stormwater Management Plan. And that really outlines all of these different requirements in the permit and how the city is going to meet those obligations and how staff, Zuli and his crew will implement it, kind of. And then the last piece is some updates to the map, city map that we'll tack on to the storm sewer mapping that we did, but there's different things that the DNR requires that you put on a system map as wetlands, municipally owned facilities, private treatment, parks, garages, storage areas. So some updates to the map too.
Eric, could you speak to task 2.1, the create public education outreach policies and procedures? Is there much going on like in that area that you're aware of? Or?
Yeah, so that one in particular, the city is part of this Rain to Rivers, and you can Google it and look it up, but that really helps satisfy the vast majority of what you'll need to do for that outreach. So it's basically education, you know, and you try to do it on different levels. They do advertisements at movie theaters, try to be active at different functions. Like, you know, Tom's been, we've got this board, this Plinko board, say we, but the city has this Plinko board, and which kind of helps children interact, and adults too, I guess, but interact with some stormwater educational pieces, and you know, on the River Fest or different, you know, places where you could get passersby, or you could do a demonstration at the school or something like that too. But
I can add a little bit to that. And Eric is correct. We are have been a member of this organization called Rain to Rivers, which we send. Chad Christensen is actually our stormwater public works representative, and he was the one that actually was a big part of the inventory, working along with SEH last year with our inventory. Speaking on public education, we talked about Rain to Rivers, which we do it as a group, and we get credit for things, as say if River Falls would do something, and or we advertise or have flyers. Right now, the last few months, we've finalized door knockers that we're going to get distributed amongst the community. We'll probably do that through some volunteer programs also. We have this Plinko board that Eric referred to. We have it downstairs, but it's an interactive activity that kids put a puck or whatever, and it has each puck has might say dog waste, might say leaves, rubbish, oil, dirt, things like that, and it goes through. And the whole idea is that not to give it into the center place with the ducks, but to get it off to the side, like rain gardens or stormwater retention ponds or settling ponds, but you know, that's bad stuff into the river. And it's just kind of a fun game for the kids. But we've had it at the city has had it at the Builders Association Spring Fest up in the hockey arena earlier this year. We've had it at Earth Day out at the YMCA. Last week, Chad and I went down to, we had a couple busloads of kids. I forgot what grade they were, fifth graders, I guess. Down at fifth graders, down at Lakefront Park, and we had a demonstration with a Plinko board, and just gave the high school kids, not high school kids, grade school kids, kind of a informational center. So that's part of what we need, as Chad is doing as our MS4 public education and outreach. You know, like I said, the door knockers are going to be a thing. We're part of the group. We're trying to do, involvement with, city functions, activities like Riverfest will be coming up this summer.
Okay.
Last year, we also had an interactive concert set up by Deborah with the Toonies. They're an environmental group that actually did a concert for stormwater quality.
Sure, sure.
We'll be here again.
So, as far as like, have we ever cooperated like with the school district? Is that the field trip thing you were kind of talking about, maybe? So
Yeah,
there's
we
like
had
some,
we had the full field trip. We had the Earth Day. Another thing that we worked with the Tropical Wings, put a request in for a grant to Rain the Rivers. There was a small internal grant.
okay,
And Mr. Malik, along with the Tropical Wings, applied for that grant, and we got something that's called an Eco Board, and it's I haven't seen it yet. We just got it a week or so ago, but it's you put water in here or chocolate milk, and it goes through the pipes, and you can visually see the dirty stuff.
right.
Or if it's water, and then you put coloring in it, black dye or some kind of
Right.
dye with it. And it all goes down, and it shows it coming out as a river, more as a demonstration of what happens and if stuff gets down into our stormwater system.
Okay,
So we do have that now that we'll be utilizing more.
okay. I'm ready to make a motion, Jim. If
All right.
you have a question, Mark?
No, I don't.
Oh.
Well, I guess, so the output of this is the plan, an action plan,
Well, and that's like what this.
steps we need to take.
This
and
is
we
a
have to
step
define.
that we need to complete the grant and then to keep moving forward with our total program. And I think this is going to bring out a thing that, information, it's called a management plan. This is, and then this is my expectation, is we want to, when we go to a storm pond, we have a lot of conversations about how to maintain and how we're going to maintain. As part of this and as discussing with Eric, we're going to develop a spreadsheet, and as Chad has time, we'd like to go to every pond, identify the needs of that pond, and have certain standards and things, expectations of storm ponds, and then it's going to be documented, and then depending on the funding, are we going to, do the work ourselves internally? We're going to have to contract out, and then every pond will have a listing of expected or kind of anticipated costs for cleanup, mowing, brush cutting, restoration, pipe repairs, and whatever. And that's going to have to be, inspection is going to take a long time, which I think at another future date, we have to talk about our utility, stormwater utility, the funds, and to see if increase is going to be required, or, needed in the future. Because
Yeah.
of this is going to take time
Right.
and costs, and it's just, it's coming to the point where we need a full-time guy too. And that's something we're going to have to be talking about in future meetings.
Yeah, and it's going to help you outline or hopefully give clear direction of what you need to do, but it's going to take time and money to implement. The idea of cleaning the water before it goes, that's assuming that the ponds that are constructed continue to work. So there's going to be continued maintenance and inspection, and
Right.
all these things will require time. But hopefully this will lay out so that everybody knows what's expected. And
Right.
Oh, that's great. We're going to need the timeline as to how we're going to implement this, because it's not going to be today and tomorrow.
Oh gosh, how many ponds? I think there are 50, 60, more than that maybe.
yeah,
I don't know if
in
we've
that
got
range.
a total number on them yet.
We tried to inventory them last year as part of the modeling, because you put these ponds in your model to see what pollutants you're discharging, and we didn't model nearly all of them, and we tried to inventory a lot of them. Either there's not record if it's a public or private pond, and if it's a private pond, then you need to have a maintenance agreement to ensure that the private owner maintains it. And now we have ordinances in place. Actually, that's another thing I forgot to mention. We updated and created ordinances last spring. We adopted them in April last year.
We did.
We did.
Guess that.
Yeah, and so that now requires all future constructions of ponds. If a a new industry or business goes in, it'll have to have some sort of stormwater management, and they'll have to have a maintenance agreement where they maintain it indefinitely. But as we do city projects, or if you have a pond that takes water off the city street, but maybe it also takes off the business, the city can decide if want to maintain that via easement or as an outlot or whatever. But you know, a lot of questions going forward, I think. Yeah,
I think Tom and I have been talking about stormwater ponds for a couple of years. We've had some specific issues. I think the residential developments are the ones that are most complex or most mystery about how, when we say maintain, there's no definition of what that means.
I think this will clarify that.
I think it'll keep getting better. I do. I think that, you know, as Chad or whomever from Public Works goes out and inspects them, like Tom was talking about, we want to get this spreadsheet together so Chad can walk out there and be like, yeah, I estimate there's an acre and a half of clearing that needs to happen. And, you know, when he does that, then we can try to put a dollar value on it. Or if, you know, all these ponds, what they're trying to do is remove sediment and phosphorus. Well, when you remove sediment and phosphorus, you fill the pond up. You know, so like a ditch or, you know, a culvert you see in a ditch that gets filled up over time, it fills up with dirt. And so you're going to have to dredge these things and clean them out too over time.
And then I think what Jim is referring to is there is an expectation when these ponds are in development areas. I mean, you know, it's a visual, it's a visual thing that people see all the time, and I think I know that there's higher expectations of what a storm pond should look like in a development area. So we need to, you know, have a plan, and you know, the whole function of that pond is to trap things before it gets to that lower level. So you don't want the grass this high, you know, on the slopes. There's always going to be a slope, and then the flat area where the sediment settles. You know, generally, you want higher grass of, you know, a foot or so. When things, debris, you know, litter and things come down, it catches in that high grass and doesn't go to the bottom. So whether that's some kind of decorative grass or a no-mow grass or something, we have to have a plan and understanding. Maybe that's what we should, understanding of what the pond is supposed to do. Is it going to look pristine as a, you know, there's expectations, but we also have to have it functional.
Right.
So where's that fine line? That's what we want to define in this part of this project also.
Excellent. That will be most helpful. That would be just a tremendous outcome by itself.
Now this is really exciting. It's something that we, you know, like you said, we've talked about it a lot, but we need more staff. We need more time to do this, and it's a big thing, and it's required. It is required. Just on a side note, there's a storm pond in between Walmart, County Market, and Home Depot that we have had a lot of complaints on. And it's one of those ponds that the city has an easement, but it's, I think when they developed that area, the developer let it go back to the county. I think the county owns that property right now, but we still have an easement. So we actually had the correction facility people from New Richmond come in last week for a couple of days, and they picked up litter for part of one day, and it's a mess. Yeah. And we're going to actually get a demonstration with a machine called a FECON machine, which is a skidder with tracks, and it mows down trees this big and brush. Now that the litter and the debris is gone, we didn't want that all chopped up and going in the pond. So we get that cleaned up through the boot camp people, they're called. We've contacted representatives from Walmart, County Market, and Home Depot, and said we need, you know, this is where all the garbage is coming from your facilities. So we're trying to work with those guys, and then next week we have a demo or something with this FECON machine. If you're interested, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
And we're going to try to use that one and maybe Vine Hills or as a demo, you know, once we get parameters for a couple projects this summer.
How about Diamond Drive?
Diamond Drive. That's Summer Pines. Not Summer Pines. That's
Vine Hills?
Vine Hills, I'm sorry. So, but we still want to make sure we're doing it right, and so we are moving forward. We just trying to finalize things.
Yeah.
And this grant, we got extended till December 31st, so
Right.
we need to have this all done prior to that, so we can get all the documentation. And
We do, and we should, I looked, you know, we had done this letter of engagement a little bit ago now, a few months ago, but had June 30th as a completion date in here, and I don't think that that's realistic now, nor is it important to be June 30th necessarily, but the grant runs the end of this year. We should plan to be done with all this stuff kind of end of summer, so we've got months before the end of the grant, so we've got plenty of time to, DNR reviews it before they reimburse you for it, so we have plenty of time to get the stuff in and not be up against the gun at the end here.
Good.
I think that we should have it done in the summer. And
with that said, would it be reasonable, or could I make a request that we meet, you and I and Chad and Kevin, and go over those two ponds that we talked about, the Vine Hills and the storm pond behind this, and just have a little bit of an action plan so we can get those going this summer?
Sure. Yeah.
So
So we need it.
I was going to make the motion, yeah.
Okay.
So I would move to recommend approval of LEH's letter of engagement for the MS4 documentation for the estimated amount of $27,400.
I'll second the motion. Any discussion?
No.
I'm glad to see this. Well, I think the important thing is, and that maybe when we talk about this in the council, is that this is paid for. We have grant money that we need to utilize this, so let's not mess around. That should smooth the pathway.
We're doing it in steps. I mean, we did the modeling, we ran into a snag there, we had to do some talking there to get some approvals on some of our ponds that the DNR thought were not eligible, so but then after some conversations, I think that really went well. So it's a process.
Yeah.
So thanks for being patient.
Yeah, and we'll have to work too, the three of us or four of us, or for that grant too, because CIFCO was dealing with a lot of that before. I can help, as needed, but we got to stay on top of that too.
So if you need to change that, date on there, I thought it was changed, but just send over that one page and
Okay.
I'll insert.
Then the exhibit number 1 still has Tom's name on from March 5th. I don't know if we
We're
have
going to get a new Exhibit 1.
Yeah, I thought I got it.
Well, Tom's name's still, so you better.
Okay, whatever, I'll make sure that the right names are in it.
Okay.
Do we need to change the motion as to modify the dates?
Yeah, I don't think
I
that
wouldn't.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
This is good.
The retaining wall piece, I think.
Can I have all my stuff back?
Which is yours and which is mine?
It's okay.
This is mine.
I'll be good.
I think it's the retaining wall. Is that the next one?
Okay, here, I got it.
Wall is
Right here.
item number 9.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
All right. We have a request for authorizing city staff to proceed with a letter of engagement for engineering services for the design and construction of the retaining wall at 125 9th Street.
This has been an ongoing issue for many years, and it's a little complicated, and currently we do not have a clear policy on retaining walls and who's ultimately responsible for maintenance and repairs or replacement. This particular resident has requested it for a number of years, and it gets to the point where, and there was no documentation as who constructed the wall or why was it built. We do have some information that back from 1943 that there was an alley put in the 1940s. The house itself was built in the 50s. So it looks, you know, it's not clear, but it, you know, was the wall built for the alley or for the house? We don't know, and it could go either way. But currently, after last fall, we did a certified survey. We had a surveying crew come in, and the wall is on city property. And it, as if you see pictures in the issue sheet, it's falling apart, and they're probably going to eventually just give out. So we know that the wall's on city property. We don't have really, we have to kind of assume that it was maybe because of the alley.
Right.
So at that point, is it the city's responsibility to rebuild? That's what we have to decide. And if it is, I just would like to get a recommendation from the committee to move forward with, because if it's a city wall, you know, I'm sure there's different specifications and standards for a wall over 4 feet tall, and there's areas of the wall on the westerly end of that wall that exceed 4 feet. So that kicks us into that next category where we should get it engineered, some site construction cost, and move forward from there. So I'm just looking for a recommendation that we could get a letter of engagement from an engineering firm. I haven't got one yet, but I'd just like to keep moving forward with this project.
And they'll come back to determine a funding source after that.
And determine a funding source, because right now we don't have anything for this project. Estimated cost, rough estimate, we measured, David Gray, the building inspector, and I went up and measured, and we just felt that in order for the slope from the house, if we would take the wall out and just slope it from the house. I think he's going to use his whole yard, and that, you know, we don't know about compromising the foundation of his house if we would do that. Could you go partial wall? Maybe the engineer could determine that. Maybe you could go half that much. It's still going to slope. There are some trees involved, or we maybe wouldn't want that to happen because we'd lose some mature trees. The other thing we should consider is assessment. Normally when we have improvement, like city sidewalks or curb and gutter, we have assessed alleyways before, percentages, you know, that should be discussed also.
But you're just looking for a letter of engagement.
A letter of engagement and the funding source for that. You know, and I can talk to engineers and get a rough estimate about how much that would be to you know, cost-wise, just, you know, we measured the square footage, about 350 square feet of retaining wall. Just talking to one of the local contractors in town, he just threw out a $40 per square foot amount, which brings that up to about $14,000. We already have $2,000 in for surveying and whatever the letter of engagement would be. So it's sizable, but you know, I just want to caution the committee and council that there's retaining walls all over the city that we have to be careful of. You know, we should develop a policy on retaining walls. So, you know, I'd hate to set a precedent, and then all of a sudden, you know, they say, well, you built that one, or we should have clear and have the city attorney look into this and have a clear policy written so, you know, we can have ourselves covered in future projects.
I guess the question is, do we need the policy before we spend any more money?
Maybe. I guess that's why we're developing this conversation here. Maybe that's where we go first. Good point.
And this is something that doesn't necessarily need to be done right away. I'm wondering.
I think he's made a request for like, I don't know how many years, back in 8, 9 years. It's There's been like three different directors through this process.
But we do know it's city
It's
property.
on city property. We found that out last fall.
So,
I think as we look at walls around the town, we'll find that there are walls on city property that were built by the resident that they encroached, and perhaps our building inspection wasn't as good as it could have been back when that happened. Some of these have been there a long time.
This could have very well be, but yet I don't know. It's like unknown. I don't.
Do you need any help, or is there any way that you could that we could get a review of when the house was built? I mean,
The
how,
house was built in 1950, I know
Yeah.
that. I talked to the property owner several times, and I said, who built the wall? Did you or the city? And no one knows. No one's, this one is very unclear. But maybe we should, maybe your recommendation would be to send this to Catherine and authorize her to, and maybe sit down with Mike Johnson and David Gray. Maybe we sit down internally first,
yeah,
just staff. Maybe that should be the recommendation. Sit down internally with staff, come up to try to develop a rough draft of a policy, then send that on to Catherine to let her give her legal ideas on it, and then bring it back.
yeah.
Because we were also discussing,
that sounds like a good process.
because we did discuss the funding of it, because the survey alone just cost, it cost $2,000 to do the survey, so, and that came out of, just regular funding, so maybe something should be set aside for these types of things
Yeah,
to be paid for, because it came out
That's a
of.
very good idea, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah,
So maybe we should hold off on this, and your recommendation would be maybe to
Go into,
internal staff review and then send something off to Catherine.
yeah. So I would motion to do the internal staff review and get some recommendations for policy from the staff before we take this on.
I think so.
yeah. Given the pitfalls that if we did one, then we've opened the door, and we'll be inundated and still won't have the right policy in place, so.
We're going to be, every wall we'd be scrambling.
Yeah,
Right,
Just have something down and firm, and
right.
yeah, then we'll have something to apply against each request.
Yeah.
I like
Okay.
that.
okay.
That's great. Second. Second to motion.
Postponing action.
Okay.
All in
Just
favor?
going to postpone action?
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Postpone this, yes,
Yeah,
postpone
okay.
this to the development of a clearer policy or a set of guidelines.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
We got a few minutes left. We have
We
to
need
be out
to,
here in
do we
10
need to
minutes.
vote
So.
on that motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
You go first next time.
Okay. Oh, God.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to
Snow removal.
absolutely cover before we run out of time?
Yeah,
Number
right.
9, yeah, we have, and then project updates. I'll do real quick.
That's fine.
Number 9 is discussion and action, possible action on the use of land for snow removal operations. The issue sheet talks a little bit about and identifies an area that we're considering up in the business park. This area, do you guys see the map?
Yep.
This area is just adjacent to the Mimbach Quarry. It's on the intersection of Hanley and O'Neill. Kind of where we're doing our street construction. This is the area that has been for many years kind of earmarked for possibly a new public works garage and facility. Denny Darnell kind of set that aside many years ago when the business park was developed.
So the city owns this
Yes, sir.
piece, okay.
It's considered an outlot. It's not being requested to be purchased lately. As of last Friday, I talked to Mike Johnson and actually the ex-mayor, Al Burchill's still part of the business park group.
Yeah.
So with that said, short term, as part of the Hanley Road project, we ran into an area where we're making a right-hand turn into Rock Street, and we discovered that there's probably 8 foot of black dirt that needs to be removed. The contractor was looking for a place possibly to stockpile that black dirt until we could use it somewhere else. So in the short term, we have permission for black dirt storage, possibly for the Hanley Road project. Looking ahead to this winter, and I don't want to bring this up in November, but I have brought it up probably for the last 2 years, that we've hauled snow out from downtown snow removals, parking lots, cul-de-sacs. We dump snow at a little bit up at Prospect, a little bit up at Grandview Park, but the majority of the snow has been, we've removed it from downtown, and then we have brought it out to the old dog track site.
Oh.
We've had kind of a handshake agreement with the caretaker out there, and we've been able to plow it out there, dump it out there. Now that option is off the table. That's gone. So in a short term, for snow removal, we've talked with Mike and Al Burchill, and they're going to consider letting Public Works have that area possibly for snow removal. It's not 100% yet, but we have spoken with them on that. Long term, so that would be short term. We'd have to put some kind of pad or something, a little temporary driveway in there, maybe an asphalt pad where we could dump the snow and then clean it up. You're going to get sand and debris, pop cans and things like that. So we'd have an area that we would sweep off. Maybe we put some Jersey barriers around to contain it. Maybe silt fences, and then we'd keep it contained within that asphalt area, whatever we determine. So it's possibly black dirt this summer from the Hanley Road project. Next winter, possibly for snow storage. And long-term would be to acquire this land or make the Public Works Committee make a request to the business park for land acquisition for a new Public Works facility.
So that's the process.
Well, first we have to get, the process would be approval to do and I think verbally, Mark, are you okay with the black dirt for the summer? So we're good with the black dirt. The snow and the long term would something that we should keep working with the business park group.
Just a clarification, where would like the snow trucks be, or I'm assuming they're not on Hanley, but they're dumping from a different.
Well, and
O'Neill.
From O'Neill.
From O'Neill?
And I don't know if you're aware, back in 2013, we had a big windstorm, went throughout the whole city. We actually got permission from the business park at that time we made a temporary road in right behind the strip mall here, off of O'Neill.
Okay.
Quite a ways off there, and we put a temporary road in there. We should have left it. We made put gravel road in, and then that whole area was staging area for the tree services to bring the trees and debris down there. So the business park let us use it for that at that time.
Okay.
And actually it's a good convenient spot. I think we have good access. It's kind of, it's close to where we're going to be doing a lot of our work, and our current facilities way on our north end.
Right.
And I'll be very honest with you. As Eric mentioned, there's a thing that they're going to go through our public works facilities, specifically the east and west garage. And we're right above Lake Malibu, and a lot of times we wash our equipment, we do this and that. All it is a straight shot down Lake Malibu. It's called a SWIPS. And that's going to identify a lot of issues.
Who is doing this, and
That'll
when?
be
Part of the MS4.
That'll be part of the agreement with MS4.
Oh, the MS4. Okay.
So I just think that could trigger a big issue for us to move sooner than later with that. It's good. I mean, we could spend a lot of money to bring that facility updated, that facility. So, but I just would, first of all, let's like permission or to move forward with, you know, conversations with the business park.
So I'd recommend, or I'd make a motion, sorry, to recommend securing the lot in St. Croix Business Park for snow storage. And I would put possible future public works facility.
Are we talking about securing it, or are we talking about being able to use it at this point?
Whatever your comfort zone is,
Yeah.
I'd like to, I would personally, we've kicked this can down, and I've made a request 10 years ago, and I brought it up a few times in between, but you know, I had a plan back 10 years ago when I started that, you know, we were going to acquire the land and have enough money. I was like, back then it was $4 million. And all of a sudden, this comes along, now we're talking about EMS, we're talking about fire stations, and, you know, all of a sudden it gets dropped down the list. It's to the point when you think about what's going to happen with this SWIPS report. You look at, last week, Brenda and Jennifer went to the facilities, and I would really recommend, and I'd be glad to bring you guys around to all our facilities and show you. You're going to see something that our facilities are outdated.
Yeah.
I'm worried about air quality. This, you know.
Does anybody outside the city audit our facilities?
OSHA comes in once in a while.
Do we have any
randomly.
Yeah. Do we have a
And also our
last
insurance
report?
company does.
I think it'd be useful to have those, perhaps have those reports. We've kicked this around before, but what I'd like to see is that we have identify all the facilities, public works facilities that we have, you know, the basic structures that are there, what we do there, the faults of each site, and then what it would take to replace it. You know, somehow we need to pull that all together.
Yeah, we're in 5 different locations. You know, our Buckeye Garage, I mean, that was on the verge of getting flooded last week. We're out, you know, we're in East Garage, West Garage. We have some things up at where maybe the new fire station's going to be up on Ward Avenue. We have things stored out at the city landfill. So we have 5 different facilities now.
Right. Well,
It's not very efficient.
I think it would probably be good to have that, bring that, get that list together of all those, and then have an official tour of that, a public meeting, so that all 3 members can go through that, and invite anybody else who wants to follow us, ride-alongs. I
Very
think
good. Maybe we could do that at the next meeting.
I'd like to
Just,
put
you
that
know,
on
have
the-
a brief meeting here, adjourn, and then go to the different sites.
Well, the other thing, yes. So, I moved, did you make a
Already
motion?
moved, yeah.
Okay, second. That, and the motion is that Tom moves ahead in discussions,
To secure the lot with the St. Croix Business Park for
discussions
snow storage.
to secure it.
Yep.
Start that process. What is it going to take? And come back next time and say, this is what here's where we're at. This is the funding that would be needed just to, you know, and you can look at it in phases. First is snow storage, then, you know, longer term, you can't develop that in a
Yeah,
month.
well, I'd like to make a request. I mean, if we move forward with this, and if it is agreeable to the business park, is, you know, for Brenda's not here, but, you know, as we move forward with our 2019 and 2020 capital requests, that a site plan, you know, get approval for enough cost, get costs and plans for a site cost, that would be the first step. And then also, as we move, if that would go through, then maybe consider even a design for the engineering and design for a building to see where we're at with that in 2019 to 20.
Yeah, let's come in with a plan,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. This is how we would use that property. And that's a starting point. But I think I would agree, I'd like to do the tour at our next meeting.
Okay.
The other thing that we want to get on the agenda is also looking at winter snow management. While it's fresh in your guys' mind about everything that didn't work, or what worked perhaps, and see, okay, how are we going to address that this fall?
Specifically, I mean, our procedures and things, but also for Sidewalks, we dealt with that late season or mid-season, and we developed a policy for sidewalk removal and to get them, the non-compliant people going up on that. So that's something we should talk about earlier than.
Yeah, we look at that policy and formalize it and see what else do we need to do to make that work.
And then also for snow, talking about snow for next year is, we're acquiring or we're getting more streets added to our routes. Currently the golf course, the Carmichael Ridge, we haven't plowed for the last 2 winters, but I would assume that the Ware course would be on by the end of the year. That's going to be 7 more cul-de-sacs, which, and then along, Ward Avenue, Hillcrest, which goes from Culver's down to or Cooley Road. Just estimated, Kevin and I have talked about it. If we get an average snowfall, maybe 6 to 8 inches, that's going to take 3 to 4 hours. We get a foot, it could be more, a foot of snow like we've had several times. It's going to take more than that. Expectations from the residents right now are we're not fast enough. I think we need to have this discussion this soon to talk about either more manpower and more equipment. Yeah. We keep getting these developments, but as the city grows, our city staff stays the same. We can't get the same quality of expectations and services if we stay stagnant.
And I think one thing we can do is say what's a realistic expectation too, and we can try to name that to help the public out with some.
I think we should have that. We should be just discussing that next meeting also.
We're over our time here, but I think the next meeting, I don't think we can do both the winter snow management and the tour of the facilities. Which do we need to do first? I would think winter snow, but start that moving forward.
Okay, and that's part of it too.
But that's your, you make that call.
That's fine.
You know the timing on these.
Okay. I think we're moving forward.
And then the plan on maybe a special meeting. We might want to do a special meeting to do the review.
Very good.
So we need another meeting. But.
Okay. Just project updates, quick. There's a schedule for I-94 that changes all the time. I think it's in your folder. It's the latest and greatest is on the city webpage, right, Devin?
Whenever I get on my
it's hard to comprehend.
I looked at that and I said,
look at it and I got to see because I'm pretty sure that the eastbound exit ramp is, or excuse me, I-35 southbound and you're going to go on I-94 eastbound, that's going to be closed till October. And it's actually directing people over to Highway 95 in Minnesota and back through.
See the signs.
Someone said, well, why don't you put signs up to have them go up Cooley Road? If you get asked that, the intent is not to have the detour on city streets and one of the DOT projects. So that's, and it would be better with all the traffic issues that we have at 11th and Cooley and Carmichael and Cooley. I think I wouldn't touch that. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, and now that they've closed the 14th Street exit to September.
Only one lane going down on 2.
On 2. It's really, we don't need any more traffic up there. I think that's I thought that was silly when they first talked about it, but now it
makes sense.
It's absolutely the right thing.
Walnut Street Bridge, just so the committee knows, is that it will be open before Memorial Weekend. Talked to the contractor and the engineers last week. They poured the decking last Friday. They did some cleanup and things today, and actually Saturday they were working.
Is that the one right on the river?
Right there.
The Dyke Road?
Yeah.
Walnut Street Bridge, right?
Yep.
They're going to do the overlay tomorrow, which is a special concrete, and that should be done tomorrow. The painting, everything, the road will be open on, as promised, before Memorial Weekend. But because of the extra work that they needed to do on the decking and the April 14th snowfall, they got everything done except for the painting of the railings. But that's something we're going to talk about scheduling and how we're going to do that. They mentioned something about closing it off in a week or so, and I said absolutely not. We can't close that down for a week in the summertime. But they fulfilled their obligation to have the roadway open by Memorial Weekend. Okay. And then we'll talk about the painting future.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Move to adjourn?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
That was a lot of stuff.